First of all, please, thank you to Vishal coming all the way over to Capital Club here.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And I'm going to start with a couple of questions, and then, of course, we'll open it up to you to be able to ask your own. But to get a perspective on a story, it's important to know how that story began. And I don't mean from your early childhood memories. I mean really from your career and work that actually made this come to life. What was it that sort of transpired through your life that tell us your story in that respect and got you to this stage?
Sure. So 1992, I started out as an intern with Legacy Pricewaterhouse. I sort of spent a good chunk of my life in the States. So my first job in Washington, D.C., I was paid $8 an hour, and I had Christmas and my birthday off the first year, and I think with Thanksgiving thrown in the second year. It was the time where FaceTime mattered. I remember my senior partner, who's no longer alive, saying to me one day at 8 o'clock, finding me by the elevator, "Half day today, Vishal," with a snicker. And he was, I think, quite serious. So starting from that point in my life, moving to Africa in 2004, with what meant to be a 15-month contract, and it's been 15 years, I went local. Made partner in the 2006-2007 timeframe. Served a career doing deals across Africa, being a financial advisor, primarily in emerging markets. And then left my partnership in 2014 to run the balance sheet for General Electric across Africa. So I joined GE, which was my largest client at the time, and began to run the balance sheet for 3 years. And then after 24 years of what felt like a corporate prison, last June I kind of said, look, this has been really good, and I bought my first house because of this. I have everything I have in my life attributed to the skills that I learned thanks to my corporate life. But enough is enough.
You know, what's interesting is that doing interviews, I found most of the people I have to talk to give this kind of navigating corporate life through a Western perspective. And of course, what you bring to the table is a very different, often challenging, but often very rewarding experience. So in terms of building that career throughout Africa, what do you think actually added to your knowledge base that would be different from what other people write about?
Well, first of all, it's not different whether you're in Silicon Valley, Perth, or Nairobi, and that's perhaps one of the biggest fallacies or misconceptions. And to that point, as business leaders in this marketplace, I think we have a real responsibility to kind of tell our stories. So we spend all our time consuming, in some ways, from the West. But whether it's the Middle East or Africa or Asian markets, we too have stories. And these stories are no different than stories generated in Philadelphia or Perth or elsewhere. So I think that's a big part of kind of, where my mind has been. And what has kind of inspired me in a big way to do that is just that, to come out as a business leader and not hopefully present a vanity tale, which I fault a lot of business leaders from doing. At the point business leaders wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to write a book, it's really a biography as opposed to something people can take with them and learn from.
How did you separate what is the personal story, which is often the foundation of what makes a person what they are, with the business aspect? How are you able to differentiate between that?
You can't, because I spend more hours at work than I did with my family for all these years. So if there is anything worth telling, it's how the personal tales have taught me something that I'd like to share with everybody. And my book is full of personal tales. I talk about my children, I talk about my wife, I talk about leadership lessons from my 10-year-old, I talk about lessons I learned from friends and other peers. And I think that's probably the best way of validating a point. Otherwise it might sound like a sermon. Or if you actually see a lot of academic authors, they rely on empirical evidence and research. I don't need neither of the two, right? So the best data I have, so to speak, to point to a point is actually my own experience.
So I'm gonna play the not cynical, but sometimes what we consider skeptical journalist. Why should anyone read the book?
Couple of reasons, right? One, I promise you the best return on investment of time. I wrote this book for someone like me and hopefully you. And what that meant is I cannot read a book cover to cover in one go. I read 6 books at a time. I go in and out. I hate the font setting. I hate these margins that don't have enough of space. I hate stuff that doesn't work for my aging eyes. And I hate big fat books that I cannot accommodate in my thin Mont Blanc briefcase on a flight.
Have you read Harry Potter? It's great. I recommend it. I like it a lot.
Actually, Ian's daughter's in the play. Did you see that? Ian, the general manager of the club, has got his daughter in the Harry Potter.
Oh, really?
Lily Potter.
Brilliant.
So, bravo to right.
Comment on
Yeah.
something that Vishal said earlier, which is that leaders in business, in MENA generally, do not stand up and tell their stories. And here in the Middle East, we have one dominant publisher of books, publishing, and they have struggled to get people to tell their stories. And Khalaf Haftor has done a great, really great book, etc. With the help of a ghostwriter, I'm sure. But so few people have. And I think it's a real shame because we want to learn from successes, we want to learn from failures, we want to learn from challenges, etc. And there's very little out there. So it's great that you've done this.
Thank you.
Well done.
Was basically that, it's nice to hear a story from the region because we don't generally get that. And that's true because one of the things I had to cover a lot of the time when talking about the Middle East is they're often family businesses and they have their own complexities. One thing, let's say if there was a core nugget of value in this, what is it someone would walk away with?
Oh, I hope there's more than one, but I think the one thing that is getting a lot of play, right? So look, I think it's all great, as every person who does a project thinks, but the feedback is helpful, and I feel that this lion and goat chapter that I deliberately kind of moved up from my final manuscript from the 3rd chapter to the 1st chapter is actually getting a lot of play, and that story is really about sort of a deep belief I've had my entire corporate life. And I see some old colleagues and friends here, and hopefully they'll be able to testify to it, which is I really have believed all my corporate life there are only 2 kind of people in the workplace, a lion or a goat. And you got to think hard about which one are you. And most people have ingredients of both. Most people, I really believe most of us were born lions. We can talk about that a little more. But we go through days and months being goats, or we have ability to be lion and we don't harness that enough. And I think that for me, the lion is not someone who is someone who roars at you all the time, is aggressive at you all the time, comes at you all the time, wants to bite your head all the time. I think a lion is more someone who, through good times or bad times, holds his own, is regal, is confident. The body language sets it apart. Its DNA sets it apart. So I contrast it with the goat, and I kind of say, perhaps facetiously, the one thing that comes to my mind when I think about a goat is my Friday biryani, right? I mean, that's the one thing I think about when I think about a goat. So, people are restless. People, run helter-skelter. People are indecisive. People kind of run around all day long without a objective. And that's the goat. So I think to get to be that lion in the workplace. And Riz, it's not to say that the lion is not killed. It's not to say that the lion doesn't find himself in a tight spot. So that's another part that I really enjoyed kind of trying to describe in the book, that I've seen lions being tranquilized on game reserves in Kenya. And I promise you should go and look this up. Their heads go back as they're being tranquilized. Now think about a goat and go see one, YouTube it. As a goat is being slaughtered, I promise you, the head goes down. And that's just the DNA that sets it apart. And what I'm saying to young people and old people and business leaders and those that aspire to be one is be the lion every single day.
I think actually the ladies here will validate the fact that it's actually the lioness in charge. So perhaps be a lioness on. I actually, in all honesty, I tend to now, because of my particular project with underwear, associate myself with, that's a long story.
With a straight face.
Associate myself with a rhino because I can charge more. No, but actually, Actually,
explain
and
that, Richard.
yeah,
Sounds
actually.
quick.
No, sorry, very, very quick. Sorry for those who don't know. I launched an underwear brand called Horny, Horni, and it's an anagram of rhino. We donate part of our profits to help save the rhino. And the last white male northern rhino just died a couple of days ago. So that's almost the end of that line. Sudan, his name is, yeah. So the other thing is then people can get an understanding of your story, what you've been through to donate that. To share that knowledge. Who did you have in mind when writing the book? Who did you have in mind?
So, a really good question. My target audience is someone who is probably about 10-ish years behind me in corporate career. So not in age, but so senior, middle-level managers, someone who is working with teams, building teams, has reporting lines, gone through that. And I would say a very close secondary audience is actually my peers, C-suite people, CEOs, boardroom, peers of mine, that hopefully will resonate with some of the stuff, hopefully will see themselves in it, hopefully will try to, one of my big messages back to that room is to kind of say, try to eradicate some of the stuff that I'm talking about navigating around in your businesses. Because what are we talking about here? Navigating corporate careers, how hard it is? If you were to turn that on its head and make your businesses and make your workplaces and corporates as the leader more enjoyable, devoid of burnout and politics and cultural issues and all of this stuff, wouldn't you be more proud as a business leader? So if this is resonating with you, it's actually a call to action, because stamp it out of your business.
By the way, I hope you're not calling yourself an expert, because
Not at
someone said to me years ago that an expert is someone who's made all the mistakes possible in a very narrow field, which is not a great thing.
I've made plenty of mistakes.
And I hope you're not a consultant, because a consultant is someone who borrows your watch to tell you the time. So those two should be out of the vocabulary. So Vishal, I'm going to ask you to read a chapter, and I found this fascinating. You mixed up the fonts a little bit in the book to help find those particular chapters. And I know there was one particular bit you liked, and you can read just a couple of lines from it.
So Riz was asking me which is my favorite chapter, and Riz has read the manuscript rather than the book. And Riz was asking me, what is your favorite chapter? And it's easy because it's set in a totally different font. So in case you miss it, it's page 52 and it's in a totally different font. So it says, one of the most important and valuable lessons I've learned throughout my entire business career is that you must give to get. If you want acceptance and trust and admiration from your team, peers, business associates, and customers alike, then you have to give them your acceptance, trust, and admiration, and the very best of your valuable skills. If you want them to deliver for you, then you have to deliver for them first. Give to get. Right? So that's kind of the value system that you'll see running through the entire book, through each chapter.
Do you think that we've reached a stage in the business world, where there are people who are quite cynical about how big business works, and are looking for businesses to automatically have that give aspect built in? How can you differentiate yourself from the need to give as opposed to the wanting to give?
Well, look, if you talk to every individual in this room, and I've polled so many and I've experienced this myself, business leaders today are saying, what do you mean give? My customer, my teammate, my staff wants from me all day long. What do you mean give? I give all the time. My customers want bigger discounts. People want to commoditize me. My staff want bigger bonuses. There's this want around my life. How can you say I'm not giving? The piece that I think business leaders miss in that equation is ask yourself, are we giving enough of trust, and are we giving relationship where it matters? Because when we talk about give, we think in a commoditized manner. We talk about these variables that we play with every day, whether it's price or discounts or all this stuff. But do we really give trust? Do we really invest in relationships? And if we do those things, then I think that the whole issue of giving from a get standpoint, the return, just becomes so much easier. You don't feel like people are taking from you every day because you're actually building trust. And sure, as Adam Grant says, that they're takers in your life, they'll come after you all day long, but hopefully you're less commoditized and people don't take from you all the time or want from you all the time because you invested in relationships and you built great trust.
And that's one of the key things. I mean, I personally look at my life, my closest friends are the guys I grew up with from the age of 8, 9, 10, 11 mostly, high school. How much is that an important factor, building the long-term relationship, and how easy is it to build long-term relationships now when people are often pushed towards a bottom line that may mean changing partners, changing vendors, changing a bunch of people in that business?
Well, look, I have a call-out box in my book that I call the priceless asset, and that for me is reputation. So it's what, as I say it, it's what you take home to dinner every night. It's your reputation. So to your point, that oil that you gave the relationship when you were 9 years old, 19 years old, 25, 40, to destroy that, to damage your relationship, to not think about association risk. It's just, I look at people and their friends before I associate. I don't spend as much time looking at your balance sheet when I'm making a investment in your firm. I'm now a venture capitalist. I look at your friends. I look at your suppliers. I look at the ecosystem around you, because otherwise the investment is a little bit of a crapshoot anyways. Who knows, right? But the quality of your association and the ecosystem matters. So to keep that together, we get into a dispute, say sorry. I learned that from my wife. It works.
It's amazing how a repeated experience works, isn't it? Ladies and gents, please, any questions? Thanks, Daniel.
Just
So we get your microphone quickly so people, in case they can't hear behind you.
Thank you. I asked Vishal to write a quote on the board. Sorry, I'm CEO of Signature Clubs International, manages the capital clubs, and I asked him to write an inspirational quote on the board for all of the staff in the back office, and it was to play horizontal, it's non-negotiable, which I've read the book and I think it's a great part of the book, and I just wanted to ask you to perhaps talk a bit more about that, because I think it's key for any person in corporate life to play horizontal.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example, and I don't mean to personalize it, but I was having drinks with some of the Capital Club wonderful team last night, and I was talking to a young gal who is in events and sort of just sharing my experience from the club in Nairobi and chatting a little about the commercial value to members and how she might be able to call up members and talk to them. And she said, I do events. For me to call up the CEO of Standard Chartered and offer him play tickets or give to the point that you're trying to make from your book, it's not my job. And then, what will membership sales feel? And they'll feel like I'm treading on their toes. And that's the point I'm trying to make, that where is the silo coming from? So what, that it's in your job description? Do you not believe that you're here to deliver outcomes and value? And if you've got these relationships and you can add value, reach out, talk to these people. Who cares about these silos? The sad part about corporate life or businesses is today, more than ever before, we're put in silos. I've got a wonderful multinational friend sitting in the back seat who works for a large consumer products company. He knows exactly who I'm talking about. He's in the facilities part of the house. Okay. For him to talk beyond facilities in his large global multinational is perhaps a crime. But yet, if he were to be able to leverage his relationships within the company and be able to push the envelope a little more, and when he sees outcomes he can deliver for his company, go horizontal, it makes so much of business sense. We just don't do that, and it doesn't matter what our employers say we should.
Why do you think silos have become so prevalent? Why do you think that what used to be a horizontal base which allowed better relationships, why do you think that has been eroded?
The image that comes to my mind when you ask that is pre-independence India. All these little gangster-like kingdoms, all these little silos, all these little princely states who kind of said, you will not conquer me, this is mine, I get taxes, this is all great and mine. That's the image that comes to my mind. And actually, that's what bosses and leaders and finance and marketing and manufacturing and supply chain does to you all day long. They say, I'm going to hire another 50 people. People just talk about the headcount they can add, not the outcomes they can deliver. It's just the sad thing of our business. So can I add another 10 people? Do I have to cut 5? All of this stuff. And what is that? That is today's princely state. That's all it is. And no doubt that the leader is now insecure. The leader is doing this. He's trying to guard his people, and supply chain and finance is going to have a huge fight tomorrow morning because I'm going to look after my people and he's going to look after his people. Well, shit. The shareholders, what about them?
I wanted to make a comment about ambassadorship within companies because, I mean, I've experienced, and I know that you have, and you are now, Riz, when you start a business, you are the brand. There is no big name, KPMG or PwC or Shell behind you, etc. It's just you. And then it's 3 of you, and then it's 5 of you, etc. And I do a lot of training with organizations, and constantly I see organizations that have grown, 5-year-old, 10-year-old organizations with maybe 500 people, etc. And those who work in it don't see building relationships, getting out and gathering intelligence as part of their job. They're either lazy, or they're shy, or they say, this is not part of my job. I do this, I don't do that.
That's right.
And it's such a missed opportunity because you're so right that at every level, whether it's compliance, risk, treasury, accounting, finance, purchasing, food and beverage, whatever it might be, there are opportunities to help grow the brand, to spread the word, etc. And generally, the best run hotels, like the one Sandra runs, Palazzo Versace, the whole team is part of the relationship building world. But in many companies, it's all little silos. The cross-selling is pathetically bad.
You're dead right. And if I could kind of just offer you something, for many years, what I did at the end of the year, when I determined bonuses for my team and promotions, is I made a list of all the guys and gals in my team that stuck their necks out, that actually got slapped, that had a really horrible year, that actually could register failure, but came out after that failure and came back to work the next month. I made a list of all those guys, and I promoted those people. Because they tried. They didn't have to do it. They didn't play safe. I paid them more every year.
Could I fail regularly in your company?
Sorry?
I said, could I fail regularly in your company? Now, actually, it's interesting, and actually what you say is very interesting, because I had an interesting experience which taught me, or at least has resonated with what you're saying. I ended up with an issue with my place in DC. A plumber comes, electrician comes, AC guy comes, and I got this old geezer of a general contractor. He said, the problem is each of these guys specializes, and no one knows how their work fits with everyone else's. He said, because now they come and they do their bit and they go. Whereas someone like him, who had to build houses when he was a young man from scratch, had to know how the electrics fit with the plumbing. You can't put a plastic pipe section in a metal pipe if you're going to put a ground wire, an earth wire to it, because suddenly you've negated the value of the earth. Things like this. And he said it's really interesting how people don't know the foundations. They don't know how to build from the ground up. And therefore, with their silos, they end up creating more problems. So what's the solution? What would you suggest, say, budding entrepreneurs, people, or even restructuring their business, if they're coming to you for advice, how would you advise them on how to create the greater horizontal value, create the ability to build from the foundations up, rather than try to build stories that are in the air, basically?
Well, look, really good question, and I feel that the world is getting more and more specialized and siloed. So I would sort of say live and learn, share and collaborate, build the relationships that's right, communicate so much more, exchange stuff, curiosity, old-fashioned curiosity to learn, to kind of say, hey, Mr. Marketing, I'm a finance dude, I know nothing about marketing, but why don't we have drinks together, and why don't you talk to me a little bit, or what is this thing called supply chain, or I'm in the front office of this great firm, but I don't actually know how IT systems works at all, and I'm a sales and trading guy at Bear Stearns or some investment bank, but the back office and the settlement of everything I do is actually what brings the money in, right? I'm the big showman in front. Will you explain this to me? How does it actually work? I think that stuff determines leaders of tomorrow. Because leaders of tomorrow, I'm sorry, are not marketing people or IT people or finance people or supply chain people. They're great managers, they're great leaders, and they understand all of it. So do you want to be the leader of tomorrow? And I know everybody kind of puts their hand up and says, hey, I want to succeed, I want to be the next CEO. But have you conditioned yourself? So it's great that you want to go and play tennis and win the Wimbledon trophy, but have you actually worked for it? And likewise, have you worked in your career to be the CEO, or is it just this promotion that you expect will come to you someday?
It's the people skills that trump technical skills.
Oh, I heard Trump and I stopped.
Yeah, I know, I did too. I was like, and Trump is British for passing gas, actually, so it was even worse. No, actually, no, it's right. So people skills do go above those.
Sorry, and this is sorry because we used Trump as a...
With a small team.
I happen to, and I wanted to share this with you, I got a little bit of time with the president of Yale University last week in Nairobi. And he happens to be the world's foremost authority on emotional IQ. So his research, by way of background, is emotional IQ and leadership. So it was a real pleasure to chat with him. So I said to him, Professor Salovey, we've got a president in the White House. Would you talk to me about his emotional IQ? Because, we talk about emotional IQ and leadership. And it was really interesting to kind of see the take on that, right? Because leadership must have emotional IQ today, but it doesn't mean that everybody does. And we've got an example.